we've seen this acceleration of digital occur through the pandemic. It's kind of an evolution of things that were already happening, just really ramped up. So thinking about the small business owners in your markets, how are you seeing their needs evolving? Sean?
We are definitely seeing their needs evolving. We're seeing our customers, small businesses down to our micro businesses, looking for technology, looking for a way to transact business away from the bank in their office versus our office.
So are any of y'all seeing more expectations around needing particular digital tools to have those in place for your small business customers?
I'm seeing that there was a gap for a long time for us to have different payment channels for them to accept from their clients or consumers. And we're starting to try to bridge those gaps.
Is anyone else seeing you're talking a little bit about payments there, is anyone else seeing that kind of enhanced need for payment services and meeting those needs there?
I would say in the restaurant business, they had to pivot and had to have mobile checkout. And so restaurant owners that never thought that they would have a need for that had a big need for it, and they had a quick need. So that was probably the biggest thing we saw in our market.
Now, there are other expectations that you guys are seeing around technology, anything else that kind of comes to mind when you're talking about their evolving needs for your small business customers?
I think, back to the payments, digital payments is obviously an expanding market. And so our customers, especially pandemic and post-pandemic, how do we make those payments faster? And I think another part of that is in the consumer realm, we're starting to see faster payments coming faster, no pun intended. But on the small business side, they want to see that same level of speed with the payments that they're making. And so they're asking us all the time, how can I make that payment faster? How can I get it to my vendor or my employee faster than I'm getting it there today?
I mean, Derek, you kind of see all this at a macro level, working with small businesses across the country. So what are you seeing happening?
I think the biggest impact is the consumer behavior shift is causing the business owners to react. So Stacy was sharing about how Apple Pay and Google Pay and those types of services have escalated dramatically during the pandemic. And I think what that is a signal of is consumers want to pay virtually, or they want to pay with just a tap. They want to pay from home. They don't necessarily want to have the traditional in-person transaction anymore. And so small businesses are resilient to the point that they will react to market conditions. Commerce is on the rise, and we're not going backwards, and we're not going back to cash and check. And so I think we're going to see this continued flux and change really of business owners having to move from in-person transactions to digital-based transactions. And banks are going to have to respond because there's a whole category of technology providers that are providing those services today.
I mean, you mentioned a couple of, Google Pay, Apple Pay, those kind of external entities. So I'm curious, and maybe Cindy, you want to weigh in, how you're seeing that competitive landscape shift.
I think probably one of the biggest challenges we see, and I don't know if it's seeing a shift, is how do you take all this technology and integrate it to their current business process? That's probably one of the biggest challenges we've faced, is just how do you take all this and bring it to what is their core system and not overwhelm their staff within their small businesses.
So are any of y'all concerned about those kind of non-bank entities that have been, kind of playing in the space, those other services? You talked about integrating with some of those core. Sometimes those core functions offer something that's on par with what a bank would do. Maybe not the relationship, but at least the technology. I mean, so is there any concern about how you're addressing that kind of space and competing with that?
I would say so. I had a conversation earlier with a bank on a reference call regarding a piece of technology that we have, and the conversation turned to, how much revenue were we making, what's the adoption rate, and what I responded with was, I'm not really focusing on the revenue generation or the adoption rate. I'm focusing on the fact that my customer came to me for the service and didn't have to go somewhere else. If I make some ancillary income, or I don't have a 50% adoption rate, however many people adopted, that means they didn't go somewhere else to get that service that I was able to provide.
And I think it's always a concern when somebody else is stepping into what is your comfort zone and your marketplace. what we're seeing in most of our markets is they still trust their bank relationship. So they're turning to us for guidance because there is so much more technology than they've ever seen and they've had to learn about. And so I would be concerned if they quit turning to us, like Sean was just saying, when they quit coming to us asking for guidance.
We have to bring something that's cost effective for them, because that is the biggest deterrent for a lot of programs for businesses is how costly is it going to be to my business? Because we often forget behind the scenes of that business is a consumer, and the consumer's using all of these new innovative payment channels, and they can't bring that very cost effectively to their business and accept those payment forms as well.
Thinking about this embedding of fintech and doing that to compete and meet that competitive landscape. I mean, a lot of these outside players are making it easier, just trying to make it faster, getting funds into hands faster and what have you. So, I mean, anything else to add about how you're responding to that landscape?
Well, I'm talking to the different fintechs that we are partnered with or others that we might be interested in. And one of the things that they have to compete with are some of those companies that are offering the real-time payments settlement for those businesses. And that's something that hasn't been thought of in the past when it comes from merchant services and some of those different channels that they can accept their payments. They want to receive those funds immediately, and we just haven't been able to traditionally do that for them.
Now, Derek, any thoughts about what you're seeing on the competitive landscape and how you're seeing banks respond?
Yeah, so I think thankfully for the first time in my whole career, we kind of talked about that earlier, I think we're finally starting to see this environment where the digital banking providers and the core providers are creating an environment where banks can have conversations with fintechs and have a lot of success. So 2 of the 3 here are on Q2 digital banking. One of them's on Urbano Jack Henry. And I would say in all 3 cases, our implementation plans were very short. We were able to get to market literally and integrate with those providers in weeks and get solutions out in months. And, traditionally it was a long procurement process and going through, a whole backlog of integration capabilities. And we're talking about something in 1 year and deploying it in the next year. And that's just not going to cut it today. And so we're thankful as a fintech provider that the ecosystems are opening up. I'm sure they're thankful as bankers that the ecosystems are opening up. So you can go have a conversation and say, you know what, this solution meets a strategic need of my financial institution. It's going to help my customers. I need y'all to figure it out so that we can make progress with our customer base. And I think we're at that point in time where we're actually doing that pretty well as an industry now, which is great.
I mean, you bring up a good point because, as community banks, you're not inventing that technology. You've got to work with outside providers to put that in place. So, I mean, how are you kind of strategizing about, okay, here are our goals around small business. How do we work with technology providers to meet those goals?
Well, I think it's opening the conversation with the vendor. So the existing vendors or new vendors, you have to find some type of solution that can meet those needs, and then having open dialogue about how can we make this better, because I'm not the only financial institution this could benefit, and then ultimately servicing those businesses in the way they expect, because they are expecting some of these technology advancements that consumers have had at their fingertips, but the business has not traditionally.
I think Derek said it best, is the conversation's very different with vendors now. Long before, projects would last 1 year or 2 years before implementation, and to compete, you can't do that anymore. You're looking at sometimes from execution of contract to rollout 6 months, and that's really different than what the banking industry has been used to in the past. But to compete, you have to meet that timeline.
In the past, our strategic plan may have included 1 or 2 pieces of technology, if we were lucky, a year, working with our digital banking partner and their proactiveness of going out and doing that project means that we can bring on more technology faster. And as a community bank, we just didn't have the resources to manage those projects. And so by partnering with Q2 is also strategically in line with us of what technology can we bring to the table, build out the integration, and then package it to us to have a quick, to bring it up quickly for our customers. So
I think the evolution is frontline acquisition and servicing of the customers is the bank's role. And they've built a reputation of trust and service and compliance, and we can lean on that. The role of the Q2s and Jack Henrys of the world are to be these ecosystem providers that can connect banking customers to technology providers like ourselves. Our role is to know the market better than any of the other two. We should know micro and small business banking better, than anybody. We should go deep on that. We should understand the needs of the business customers. We should be talking to business customers and bringing those insights back to the bank. And then overlaying that with what you all are hearing and your needs in your market, and then integrating our product suite into their digital ecosystem. That's what we have to do. We have to think about it as a roadmap of delivery, like these competitors do. And we have to move quickly, but we have to have the voice of the customer, ingrained in all of us, throughout that whole process, and then create an environment from a technology standpoint that we can integrate and all succeed.
Sounds great. Sounds simple.
Well, I don't know about you all, but I can't see past 6 months because things evolve and change, and you think you have something in place with a vendor, and then there's a gap somewhere. And so you got to work through that, and how can that be solved between both of you to get what you really want? And I think that each financial institution kind of has a little different take on what they're expecting from that. And the fintech is expected to listen to all those needs and find a common ground to provide those out there. But I really can't see beyond 6 months because you just don't know what's going to hit you next. What's the timeline of some of these faster payments initiatives? Because they're really kind of up in the air as far as when they'll land. And then it's all about getting in the queue with a lot of the vendors and signing up for a product like Cindy was speaking about. How soon can you get in there and get in that queue? And you don't even know you want it until it's there on you. So you don't have much time to react.
Are you guys looking at any specific capabilities, in terms of, we talk a lot about making that account opening process easier. We talk about making the lending process easier, both automating it for the back of the house, but also to make it easier for the customer. What are you guys looking at?
We're looking at all of the above. Some initiatives that we have coming up are looking at digital account opening for the commercial account. The consumer account digital opening has been out for a while. They've kind of mastered that. The commercial account opening is really evolving. So we're looking at how can we make that process more efficient for our customer. Treasury management onboarding is another area where we're looking to pick up efficiencies and how we can do that faster, how we can do that more efficiently for the customer, maybe in the customer's office versus collecting a lot of data back in our office. And then small business lending is another area where we're looking to increase efficiency. Those loans are important to the bank, but we can't run them through our traditional underwriting processes. And so we've got to figure out a way to, number one, make it easier for the customer, like our competitors are doing, and then secondly, making it convenient for us. And I wanted to touch on something that was said on the service. What we're seeing is our customers want personal service, but when it comes to transaction processing, they want as much automation as possible. And so they want to be able to do it on their time. They want to be able to transact that business on their schedule. But when they do reach out to us, they want to know that someone's there, a trusted advisor, if you will, to help them.
Digital account opening has been on our radar all year, as it probably has most banks in the country. And we're at the very end of a project for that to hopefully have one in place by next May. And same to what Sean was saying, be able to do it for small business, but also something that could go large commercial businesses, the more complex GDAs. So I'm sure that became high priority this year for every bank.
Now, how do you guys look at return on investment on these, adding more ways to serve that small business customer? How are you considering ROI and measuring that you're getting that return?
Obviously we're bankers, so return on investment is very important. Luckily, I'm not the CFO of the bank. And so my job is to make sure that I am providing the best in class, best of market technology to my customer. The return on investment doesn't always come in the form of new business. Obviously, if we can move faster, we can onboard customers faster, but it also creates efficiency within the bank, which means that I can become much more efficient with the resources I have versus having to go out and get additional resources. So it's not a direct answer on how we calculate return on investment, but it's looking at it conceptually a little different than just dollars and cents. It's how does it build a better bank for the future for us?
I think our biggest piece for digital account opening has been what's going to be the best experience for the customer. We've seen such a need for that this year, and so that's really just what's weighed heavy on our decision and how to make that decision.
And I think that we have to do it within the compliance realm, so there's a lot of hoops to jump through, of course. But I think with the small business, we're looking at what can we bring into our digital banking experience for our customers. So we're not really interested in another app that can be separate. So really we aren't looking at anything that can't be integrated, because it's got to be easy for them. They can go back to it easily, back in their digital banking. They don't have to remember a login to another app or something, and then they feel like they have that local bank support that they've trusted for a long time to help them with many things other than banking. I've helped a lot of different things over the years.
Derek, do you have any final thoughts, as we're looking at creating deeper, long-lasting relationships with small businesses? What's your kind of final advice?
Yeah, so the 12 to 18 month thing, I like Stacy's, I can't think beyond 6 months, but I think this year it's going to be really important. We look at a lot of data, and I think we have to, the line in the sand or the battleground is really helping the business customer get paid. And whoever can win that battle is going to win the business owner's relationship long term. And so unfortunately, when looking at the data, banks are not winning that battle. They're actually getting trounced, to be blunt. Square's winning that battle. PayPal's winning that battle. Venmo's winning that battle. When you look at the banking data, it's 10 to 1. Looking at these third-party vendors to a bank's merchant services program and the ways that they collect funds. And what's happened is banks had a geographic advantage in market for many, many years. And if I'm a business owner and I'm collecting payments from my customers, there was one game in town. And then, if I deposited checks or cash and I wanted access to that working capital, I could only do that in, my local community bank. Now that things are digital and consumers are wanting to pay digital, the world's opened up and the game's changed. And so I think what we have to do is we have to go win back how a business customer deposits money. And so when we're thinking about digital account opening, it's the same as when we lock in a direct deposit relationship with a consumer. We would not ever open up a consumer account today and not ask for direct deposit. We should not be opening up business accounts and not asking businesses how they get paid, and mentioning and bringing up our products and solutions and making sure we get the first bite of the apple. We're the first point in the customer relationship. We also need to be looking at how businesses are getting paid today. If they're not using our solution, we need to service them by bringing up the fact that we have a solution. Because you know what these digital providers did during the pandemic? Held funds for business owners, right? They were not looking out for the best interests of the business owner like community banks will. So my sister-in-law is a photographer. She's run a photography business for years. And when she started to finally get payments after the pandemic was opened up, Square was consistently holding her payments for 6 weeks. No recourse, nobody to call, nothing, right? So she endures a pandemic where people don't want to be in person, finally opens up, she can go take photos of people in person, but yet she can't get paid because her industry code was locked down by Square and an algorithm, and funds were held for 6 weeks. We can solve that, right? But we have to be intuitively looking at the data, proactively offering service. It's okay that you email customers. That's fine. You can call them too, I promise. They won't bite. But we consistently, as an industry, kind of hold back marketing and calls because we feel like we're burdening people, but we're actually trying to just talk about what we have to offer and service people well. So kind of all said and done, we got to win back how they get paid. We got to be proactive with our services and marketing and let the data tell the story of where we should go, how we should go help serve these customers, what needs do they have, and how can we meet those needs?
Yeah, sounds like there's an opportunity out there for banks that can kind of marry that relationship with the technology. Well, I want to thank y'all for having this conversation with us today.